So when you get your rear spacers, you'll get a left and a right. You get the install tool, nuts and washers, a couple of stickers, a couple of cards. So that's what comes with the rear spacer kit. If you order the ones with the front 35mm spacers as well, I'll do a separate install video on them at a later date. This is what you're going to need to fit the rear spacers. You need a bottle jack, jack stands, trolley jack. This one's optional. If you don't want to use an impact gun, you can do the old-fashioned arm power. 21mm deep socket, 19mm deep socket, 18mm deep socket, and a 15 and a 10 as well. They don't have to be deep sockets, but that's what I've got. You need a couple of extensions. You need a 21mm ring spanner, an 18mm and a 15mm. You're also going to need a tape measure, a torque wrench, and a ratchet strap comes in handy. So before you jack the car up, you want to get a rough measurement from the top of the wheel arch to the center of the CV, or center of the hub. So that is, on this side, hold the tape still, it's roughly 535mm. Now you need to note that measurement down for later, so when we re-torque things up, you can get the right ride height. So find some level ground so we can jack it up. Mine's out the back. My driveway's not very level. The first jack point is right here. I prefer to put the jack stand under the cradle for this, because we need to raise and lower the car a little when doing it. So I put it under this solid piece here. 21mm socket. Now you need to come under the car, and there's 4 10mm bolts that hold the sway bar bushes. You got to undo them and drop the sway bar down. Just let that hang there. So next you want to get your bottle jack and your jack tool. Now this lower arm and the outer edge of it, see that hole there? That's what the top part goes in, and then the bottle jack locates in the bottom half. So jack that right up. Take a little tension up. Not enough to the point where you start lifting the car. Now what you want to do is undo this lower bolt. So it's a 18mm socket and a 21mm ring spanner on that side. And that separates the hub from the lower arm. And what you want to do now is slowly back the bottle jack off, but you want to pull the hub outwards as it comes down so it doesn't jam on the top of the knuckle. Take the bottle jack out, all the way. Now you can see that spring is loose. So yeah, all you gotta do is push down, take the spring out. Remove your top spring seat. That's a Super Pro one, obviously. Factory ones are just rubber, and I've got an urethane on the bottom. Next step is to undo these two 18mm nuts, and this is where your extensions come in handy. So you can get in and under here. So that's them two nuts off, and you just got your bolts sticking out. Now you want to grab your spacer. They can only go on one way. From the center there's a long side and a short side. You see up under here. So all it does is that centerpiece here goes up into there. Just like that. So once that's sitting there like that, you need your 19mm socket on your extensions again. And the trick with this one is, if you're using a rattle gun, you don't want to go stupid tight, because you still want to be able to torque these to spec. Don't overdo your nuts. So it's just nipped up. Get over and do the other side as well. Nip it up. Next step is to torque them back to spec, and they are torqued to 108 Newton meters. So you hear the click. That's torqued to spec. Now these spacers will work with any of your aftermarket spring seats. So they work with the Super Pro raised. It's a 10mm raised. It's an urethane standard replacement, and you just got your stock rubber ones. Now all of these have a little locator. So that little slot is what locates them, and on the factory cradle there's a little tab, and it's always at the back. So these bases don't have the tab, but just keep in mind when you put it up, you want the slot at the back, and that's what orientates your spring in the right spot. This side it's that at the back like that, and normally your bottom one, the slot, is always facing forward. You can see your spring, where the spring stops. It's opposite. So I'm taking the Super Pro out. I'm just going to use the factory one. So you put it on the top of the spring, like so. Put your bottom one in. Put your spring back on. Push down. So it's roughly there. Need 2 rounds of this, so I'll put the camera down again. Locate your spring in there. And place your jack tool back under. Always check it's right. Right now you can see here how it's not lined up anymore. These arms naturally want to spring back, So I've done it quite a lot of times. I don't need a ratchet strap here. I'm used to pushing them and getting them right. But this is where I'll say, and I'm going to show how to use a ratchet strap. But first, you want to jack it up just a little, just to bring it up to a closer height. Like that, isn't it? Now what you want to be very careful of is that's a rose joint and it's a rubber boot. You don't want to rip that on the edges of this. So this is where take the ratchet strap, so you want to hook one end around the lower control arm, the other end into the hole there. On the SX there's actually a little bar there, so what you want to do is just hook it on. You just want to be able to pull it forward just a little. As you'll see, when I ratchet it, it'll move forward into alignment, just like that. Always be careful of the angle of your bottle jack. You don't want to be doing it too far and for that to slip out. So now we want to continue jacking it up. When we jack it up, we want to do the same thing as we did when we lowered it. You want to pull the hub out so it doesn't catch in there and it all slips in nicely. Take your time on this part, because as I say, don't want to rip that boot. Just take up more tension if you have to, release tension off, jack it up and down. It also can change the angles, so yeah, just take your time and don't get stressed out with this step. Have your bolt ready to go. So this is the part where the bottle jack's gone as high as it can go. That still needs to go down to line up. So this is where I say you got to be careful, but drop your stand just a little. Make sure it's still directly underneath that, and then you're going to have to carefully drop your main jack. And my jack's very sensitive. A little bit too much. There. Should be able to lift that up. And there you go. And squeeze the bolt in. Rattle gun to get it like that. Easy as that was. Put the nut back on the other side. And you want to do the same things when we pulled it off. You want to grab your 21, stick it on the nut, and slowly do it up. Not too tight, you still got to talk to spec. Once you got the lower bolt in, you can take the ratchet strap off too. So this is where you need your tape measure again, and this is where that measurement comes into play to get everything at right height to retorque all your bolts. So you've added 40mm, so if you had 535 like I did on the other side, check what I wrote down on this side. What you want to do is you want to add 40mm to it. You want to add 40mm and get it back so that's in the same spot, because that's going to be your ride height. So you lower this jack, or you raise that jack, whatever you got to do. So this one's going to go a little bit lower. Recheck your measurement. Remember, it's plus 40mm on what we had. A little bit more and that one will be good. And the reason you got to do this is that's where you want to torque this bolt. You will have to loosen this inner bolt. Same with the camber arm, and same with the toe arm. Toe arm you got to be careful, and that's why I say it's good to get a wheel alignment afterwards, because that's a cam bolt. It adjusts your toe in and out. But you want to crack it off and re-torque them to spec, because the rubber bushes, they don't have a separate pin in the middle. If you got aftermarket bushes that have a floating crush tube, you don't have to do this. It won't be a problem because it moves independently. Rubber, it's not, it's fused to the rubber, so you have to re-torque it, or else you're just going to wear out and stuff all your rubber bushes. So I quickly jumped in the shed to show you this. I'm going to butt in about the reason why you got to re-torque the rubber bushes. So you can see there, like, that's the rubber bush in there. When you change the ride height, so when you move this up or down, it stretches the bush. It's probably hard to see on the camera and the lighting in the shed. So that's why you just want to crack them off. That's going to be harder than it looks. But yeah, if you don't, you're going to end up having this sort of issue, where it splits the inner off the rubber bush and damages it. And that's normally when you've got to replace the bushes. The aftermarket ones, the crush tube pin normally floats separate to the bush. So it's like an offset Super Pro one. That's the ones that come in the camber arm standard, but see how they turn? So that's not going to rip the polyurethane or whatever they call it in these ones, because it floats individually, and you also grease the hell out of them. Rose joints are the same, they move around inside there. If you go more than 40mm, I'd probably do the rose joints as well, just so you don't run the risk of splitting the outer boot. But 40mm lift, they're not as big a deal as the rubber ones, because that ball joint or rose joint will float. But yeah, this is why I say do it, because 40mm doesn't seem like much, but it actually takes a bit of pressure to pull that up. You know, you can see the table moving. So yeah, 40mm in lift, like down, is stretching that rubber, and it will end up splitting it like that. And I've got a whole bucket full of old bushes that are stuffed, so you don't want a bucket like that. If you're doing lots of work on your own car, buy a workshop manual. You can open up the suspension, and it's got all your torque specs already sitting there. So this side you need your 15mm socket. I was going to use a long one, but fouls on the wheel and I can't be bothered dropping the wheel, so I've got a short one. And you need an 18mm spanner. I completely forgot, these bolts factory are actually the other way around. Because I've had these arms out before, I've turned them around just to make it easier in future if I ever have to pull the lower arms out. So factory, it's the other way around. And then you want to loosen this one. So you want to back it off just a little. That'll let the bush set. And then you want 105 Newton meters on your torque wrench. Basically all you want to do is retighten it back up. And that's it. That relieves the pressure on that rubber bush and you won't split it. Now you do the same with this one. Now that's 105, that's 140, and the one that's a pain to get to is the camber arm. Now I can't get a socket in there to torque it, and I don't have an open-ended torque wrench, so all I do with that one is I just crack it a little. Once you've done the other two, you get a feel for it. I crack it a little and then I tighten it back up. With your cam bolt on the bolt side, so the side that faces the front of the car, you want to put a spanner on it, and what you want to do is you want to hold that and not move it. If you move it, you'll adjust your toe and put the wheel alignment out. So you want to hold that as still as you can. It's 18mm span on this side, 21mm socket that side. Just like the other arm, loosen it off and then torque it back to spec, 140 Newton meters. So with your upper arm on the inner bush, the rubber bush, you want to use a 21mm spanner and an 18mm spanner. Ratchet spanners make this a lot easier. You just got to undo it a little, let the bush turn, reset, and then you got to do it back up. Try and get as close as you can. If anything, just nip it up tiniest bit tighter, but don't overdo things. Last one to torque up is the lower arm outer, and you want that at 140 Newton meters. That's that done. And that's pretty much this side done. So next is lower the bottle jack, bolt the wheel back on, drop the jack out of this side. You can leave it on jack stand and then repeat the process on the other side. Always hand do your nuts on first so you don't cross thread anything. Now once you've done both sides, it's in that side, it's in that side, you want to bolt your sway bar back on. Now you want to be very careful with these ones because they're only a small bite and you don't want to snap it off in there. They're only 35 Newton meters. Not much at all. So that there's your spacer installed. Last thing we're going to do is torque the wheels to spec. They're 125 Newton meters. Now that's your lift. It will settle over time. Don't take that as being your lift straight away. See a lot of people measure and then say, oh, I got this much lift, but you need to give the time, like car time, to settle again, and that can normally take up to, it can even take up to a month depending on how long you, like how much driving you do. But let it all settle and then check your height, and that'll give you your true lift. As I say, they're 40mm spacer, they pretty much give bang on the 40mm. So to quickly sum this video up, I put the rear spacers in tonight and it was only for the video. I actually ended up pulling them back out. I can put them in rather quickly, like it takes me about 15 minutes aside to put them in, and yeah, the same to pull them out. As I say, you got torque specs, all that sort of stuff. Reason I pulled them out is because we're going to New South Wales this weekend and I want to take this car. It just drives a bit nicer than the big SX with all its lift, and we're going out to see Cameron in his mud trials territory. So that's going to be great fun. That video will be coming soon, hopefully. And anyway, like that car, it already has the raised king springs and the super road bushes, so it's sitting at 40mm lift already. I will put the spacers back in when I do the full 2.5-inch kit. I haven't had a chance to build I still got to build the camber arms for it, testing the new front RTV mounts and all that. Like, I want to test all that stuff before I go selling it to anyone. I have had the spacers in this car for quite a while. I only pulled them out maybe a week ago, the old ones I had, and the reason I normally had them in there was because I tow a lot of other territories home on car trailers and stuff, and that extra bit of height from the spacers makes it handle and tow so much better. But yeah, 40mm lift it's a great amount of lift because it's cheap, easy. You don't have to spend money on all the extra parts. Like, once you start going more than that, you got to start thinking about extended shocks, brake lines, adjustable camber arms so you can bring everything back into spec. Where with 40mm, there's still enough adjustment in the tow arms and everything to bring it back into factory spec. Same with if you're doing the 35mm front strut top spacers, there's still, everything comes back into wheel alignment. It's perfect, and you can drive it without having to put any other parts into it. Above that, you're starting to look at that 2.5-inch kit I sell, which is a lot more money just because there's a lot more parts involved, a lot more parts. But 40mm is good. You go that 40mm lift with 245 65 tires on some better offset rims, and I don't know if you watch any other videos, but you see the SY is very capable, and it's a great amount of fun, and it's still reliable. It still takes my kids to school, and I have no problem letting my wife and kids drive it because it's still safe, reliable, and great. It handles great. But anyway, that'll sum up this video because it's late now and I gotta go get ready for my normal work tomorrow. And yeah, and can't wait for this weekend. But anyway, that sums up this one. I'll catch us on the next one.